So it's been a while since I've been on here talking about board games, and I need to make up for lost time a bit. So what I have here are 5 small-ish box games that I'm going to be giving small-ish reviews on. And we've got a whole spectrum and range of options here. We've got a roll and write, a spatial puzzle action, some set collection, a Cards Against Humanity clone. So we're going to move through these pretty quickly, a little bit about how they work, and then of course my overall thoughts with each getting a Get This Game scale. So if any of these catch your eye, stick around. I'm Jake and this is Get This Game. First up, the smallest box of the bunch. This is Broken and Beautiful, which was provided to me by Left Justified Studios for review. And I should also mention, I'll include all the credits and details of the game below me. Now, this is a set collection game where you're going to be taking turns drafting cards. And the point of the game and the loose theme is kind of based around this idea of kintsugi, which is the Japanese art of essentially breaking pottery on purpose and then putting it back together using this golden lacquer to create this kind of beautiful finish on the pot. How does that translate to the game? Well, everyone is going to go around the circle draft style. There will be a certain number of these different types of pots. There's like cups and saucers, teapots, etc. And you're going to take turns trying to collect sets together. Each different type of pot is going to score points in different ways, but there's always going to be a few cards left over after the drafting is done. When that happens, you're going to see if you have any pottery of that type that matches the ones in the middle, and you're actually going to end up breaking them. Now, broken pottery doesn't actually score you any points, but on a later turn, you can spend little gold chits or tablets, etc., gold bars essentially, to be able to repair those. And when you have repaired pots, you're going to be able to flip those over, and that pottery is going to be worth even more points at the end of the game. So the whole stick of this game is really all about timing everything out so that you can actually repair those pots at the opportune time so that you end up cashing in on even bigger points than your opponents. After all the cards are gone, you will count up your points and the one with the biggest and most points is going to win. This game was solid. I mean, you're not going to be hitting home any 2-3 hour games with this one. This is meant to be short, it's meant to be portable, and you're supposed to carry it everywhere. The art is absolutely fantastic and is definitely a major selling point of this game. The artist did a great job here to really convey that idea of kintsugi and just show how beautiful it can be. And overall, like, the decision space is fair. I think that you do really have to think about the basic set collection things. You know, do you want sets of 3? Do you want to have the majority of one type of pot? But the trick really comes here in the whole idea of timing out and trying to make decisions to figure out when you can make those pots break at the perfect time so that later you can cash in your gold and actually repair them to maximize those points. So overall, a solid option for me. This one gets a 7.2 out of 10. Next up is Widgets N Digits from the Friendly Bee Gaming Company. Again, they sent me, this is actually a prototype prior to their Kickstarter campaign, and I'm ready to talk about kind of my detailed thoughts here. In this game, you are basically building up a factory and drafting different cards and paying for them to upgrade your factory so it is creating more produced goods. The first half of the game is, again, that upgrading component where you're going to look at the card options available, basically selecting the best one and adding it to your tableau in front of you. And then the second half is really all about that engine building that comes to fruition in that you will take raw materials, produce them into kind of manufactured goods, which get polished up into consumer goods that you will eventually sell for a profit. Now, unfortunately for me, this one's going to get a 6, but with a bit of a caveat. You see, in my first kind of few playthroughs, I ended up just playing the base game. And the base game really does drill down to what I just described. You are looking at the row of cards available in the market, and realistically, you are going to take the best one. So the decision space there doesn't necessarily translate to any huge choice. You're really looking at, okay, I need more purple sections, so I need to get the purple card. I need better raw material production, so I'm going to take the black card that corresponds with raw materials. There is a little bit going on in how the designers here set up the market, and they tried to go for a bit of a supply and demand thing. You can produce the goods and then ultimately sell them back to the market for a little bit of profit potentially. So there's a bit of timing play in there as well, in that you're trying to max out how much profit you can earn when you sell those goods. But realistically, in the base game at least, you are just picking the best upgrade The engine building really is just going from space to space, converting one resource into another, and then getting some cash at the end. But with all that being said, there are a couple of expansions at least included in this box, and it would have been an option in the Kickstarter, that seem to add a little bit more going on here. One of the expansions does include additional sort of options to add to your factory that are actually going to have special abilities as well, so you can have a little bit more choice going on there. It makes those options of choosing which card to take from the market a bit more challenging. And there's also a whole bidding for workers component in the second expansion, which, with that being said, actually sounds kind of interesting in that you will have to bid against other players around the table to secure workers that actually have to fuel the work in your factory. So with that being said, this is going to get a 6 for me right now. I'm curious to see if the expansions and the extra kind of layers of rules added here are going to make this more captivating to me, at least as a gamer. In my TikTok review, I ended up saying ultimately, you know, this is a good option for a younger kid to play with their parent. If the parent is a gamer and they want to introduce the sort of kind of concepts of what an engine kind of looks like, what resource management looks like, some basic ideas of upgrades, that would be an option for me if you're just playing with the base game, but I'm going to need a little bit more before this gets a higher rating from me. Next up, just for the clout, let's talk about a Reiner Knizia game. This is My City Roll and Build, and once again, Cosmos provided me a copy for review. Now, this is, of course, the port from the polyomino tile laying game My City. It has basically been taken from that iteration and, like so many other games in the industry, been translated into a roll and write, where you are rolling a few die that are going to dictate what type of building you are going to add to your map. The buildings are going to score points in different ways, and you're trying to max those out to try and see how well you can do compared to the other players around the table. Now, what I like about this game is how they were actually able to do such a good job of translating that polyomino tile system into rolling a set of dice. Now, one die is going to dictate what type of building you're going to build, but then the other two all have different squares on them. Once you roll them and you actually connect them together, you'll see that those squares are able to connect into actually being able to draw a polyomino shape, and it's that shape that you will then translate onto your board. Now, with that being said, this is just like My City and its sequel, My Island, a campaign game. And I just don't know that we need a roll and write to have a campaign mode. There is a lot of game to sift through here. There are actually 9 different chapters that you'll play through. And not only are the games equaling a lot of time because of that, there isn't actually a lot of variety between games. You are actually just really adding a new layer of rules that you are then carrying over through into subsequent future rounds. And I just don't know why you needed to have that stretched out over a 9-game campaign and not just have the full game kind of baked in that you can just play through. By comparison, it's a little bit unfair to compare maybe, but let's look at something like Welcome to the Moon, where yes, you are playing an 8-game campaign, but each map that you are working with is completely different. There are a completely new, different set of rules to work with. So again, I don't think a roll and write really needs to be a campaign. I even said Welcome to the Moon, but I haven't gone back to the campaign. I pretty much just pick the maps to choose to play with. So that would be my recommendation for My City. Just get to the crux of the game, probably add in a few different layers of rules, and just go with that as a one-off. Overall, with that in mind, I do like, again, the mechanic of how it was translated from tile laying to roll and write, but that campaign and just the little ticky-tacky rules that get added throughout just wasn't enough for me. So this gets a 6.9 out of 10. Next up, this is Trunk Dexting, and I really don't like it. It is not a game for me, and I don't think it's very good. This was provided to me by Relatable. You might know them as the team behind What Do You Meme, and I actually don't mind What Do You Meme. In terms of all of the options of Cards Against Humanity clones out there, they are by no means the worst offender in my mind. This one, though, does offend me, but not in a good way, in any sort of good way. The premise here is that you are going to all be collectively responding with drunk text answers to different prompts that you're going to be flipping over on cards and trying to answer to. There are a bunch of kind of bubble phrases and little magnetic words that you are going to be working with. You're going to roll a die, and the number on the die is going to dictate dictate just how many of those bubble kind of phrases you can add to your response, i.e. your drunk text. Now, the game literally says right out of the gate, just take a handful of those bubble letters, put them in front of you, and that's what you have to work with. And like so many other Cards Against Humanity clones, therein lies the problem, in that more often than not, the winner of any given round and the funniest response that makes the most sense is just going to be based on who had the right combination of different words and phrases in front of them. I, in that sense, much prefer something like the Game of Things, where, yeah, you are having the opportunity to either be gross, vulgar, nasty, whatever. I'm not saying I have a problem with that, but you have the creative freedom to kind of write down whatever response you want. You aren't constricted by the different phrases you have as options or the different cards in your hand that you have to kind of pigeonhole an answer into the response. So really not for me. The best part about this game is the production. There are all these magnetic letters and the different kind of plaques that you're going to put those magnetic letters on work. But even then, it's just a mess putting all of them in here. They should have had some sort of bag because, again, these are just kind of everywhere. So really not a game for me. Overall, this gets a score of 3.3 out of 10. Finally, let's end off on a good note with a game that I did enjoy. This is Abducktion, again, provided to me by Very Special Games for review. This is a spatial puzzle game where you are going to be manipulating cute little plastic ducks on your personal player board. You're trying to get them in certain orientations and combinations so that you can cash them in for what are called formation cards. These formation cards all have different point values on them. That's how you're going to win, by getting the most points at the end of the game. The way you manipulate your ducks is by using action cards. You'll have 3 at any given time, and you need to really center in and puzzle out how, by either rotating different ducks around, flipping their orientation, even trading them with your opponents, getting different colored ducks in the right combination so that you're getting that formation and being able to cash them in for points. Now, this unassuming game actually surprised me in how brain-burny it really can be. The fact that you are only given 3 action cards, you might think that's a little bit limiting, but what really that ends up doing is really forcing you to drill in and kind of go full beautiful mind and thinking about all the different combinations of switches and trades you can make with the ducks on your board to be able to pick up that really high value formation. Yeah, you can get the 2-pointers, the 3-pointers, but it's really you working towards those 7 or 8 point cards that is going to actually win you the game. And in that sense, you really can spend a lot of time just fixating on your board and try to figure out the best move. I got mixed reactions to this one in the comments on my TikTok. I think some people said it was pretty deterministic. It just kind of comes down to who gets the lucky action cards. But I really do disagree. I think if you were able to stare closely enough at the options that you have in terms of the actions you can take, along with the amount of interaction that can take place and kind of be a really FU kind of interaction with the players around you, this has the potential to be a solid, very kind of straightforward strategy game. Like, there is strategy throughout this. Is it going to have the decision space of any sort of midweight Euro or above? Absolutely not, but I don't think that that's the point of this game. What I really like about it as well is that you can really scale up or down the difficulty simply by adding or removing low cost or high cost formation cards, because again, those higher point cards are really going to be what are going to get you and make you think that much more, and they're just tougher to achieve. So overall, this one is solid. The spatial puzzle that you can have, the scalability of making it more challenging or less challenging really does it for me, so it gets a 7.8 out of 10. So there are 5 smallish games that I just had some thoughts on that I wanted to share with you. I do have more detailed gameplay breakdowns and overviews on my TikTok channel, but this was just kind of a chance for me to go a little bit more in depth with some of my thoughts on how I was able to grade these games. If you do like what you see and you liked any of those games or just my general vibe, I invite you to please subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications so the next time I do post a video, you'll be able to see it. I am trying to get these out at least once a week. And of course, you can follow me on all my other social media like TikTok and Instagram for some of that snappier sort of content if you want. Anyways, that's enough for me today. We'll see you next time on Get This Game.